Who cares? I don't care.
That's repulsive. Good morning, everybody. Kevin here with my man Kirk. Today, Kirk's on that side. Yeah, there we go. Today, we are going to talk about caring what people think. Sometimes we as individuals tend to overthink things. Me personally, 100%, I tend to overthink things. For some reason, I have a thing inside me that tends to not want to piss people off or make them aggravated. Therefore, I change my actions to cater to someone else's opinion that is not yet formed. So I understand that Kirk also is in a situation where caring what people think is important and may affect some actions. We're just going to have a discussion around it and kind of see where we end up. This is something that we're both actively working on, and it is very important for anyone's success and their desire to move forward and kind of progress into life.
Yeah, man, I totally agree. Should be a pretty fun conversation today. I just want to dive right into it, man. Like, why the fuck do you care what other people think?
Yeah, so for me, it's been interesting because I haven't completely figured it out yet, right? The most care that I give is around not wanting to piss people off, man. I don't know if it's an authoritarian thing. I don't know if it's a like from a parental standpoint to where you want to be good and it's been ingrained to like behave. That's kind of where I think it stems from. But really, when it comes to me, when I feel like there's a gap between where I am and an authoritative figure, that's where my care really goes in to where in most situations, not most, but some situations, I change my actions to try to please a thing that I don't know that I need to please, right? Like it's very interesting. So I try to act a certain way or behave a certain way to what I expect their expectation to be when that's not the expectation. For me, where this shows up a lot, and we've discussed this before, is like cold calling individuals and just like talking for them because I'm in real estate, right? So I need to represent someone's property. I'm speaking to someone that in most cases is millionaire, multimillionaire, and they, for some reason, I have a perception in my brain, which I I know is not true anymore. Like it's just been too many smacks in the face for me to understand that it's not true anymore. But for some reason, I have a perception of a wealthy individual being a specific way and expecting me to be a specific way and not necessarily treating another person as an equal. So therefore, I try to be more professional, right? And it's very simple. Like I try to be more professional than I am. I try to speak differently. I try to use bigger words. I try to, do things to make myself appeal in the way that I think they want me to appeal. But like the other day, man, I have a customer that I'm actually representing right now, and it's very interesting. And we were actually talking about this a little bit earlier, but like this person doesn't understand their entity setup. Like they have a business, they don't understand how the entity is set up. They had a partnership and then someone bought the other portion of the partnership and like they have an understanding of how it works, but it's not like a nuance like, like an attorney can tell you specifically this, does this, does this, does this. Like they're not that in detail. They know how it works, they know how to use it, they know the concept around it, but they don't have that specific knowledge. So a lot of the times I try to have that specific knowledge to like, hey, I have this. And that benefited me in this scenario. It's not that it's not bad to have that knowledge because it's something that I've done with myself. I have a partner in a property that we own, and it's like I've done the research on how to set this up, so I know. But the fact that you don't know isn't a deterrent if it's something that you don't know. And this is a person that is of wealth, that has a few businesses, that is literally investing, that has a bunch of money. And this is some knowledge that for some reason I feel like I need to have. And if I don't have it, I'm not good enough. Right. So I care that people know that I know this information when in reality, there's people out there that have more wealth, more success, and don't know this shit. And it's not important to them. So it's like, that's pretty much where my biggest gap is. And one of the things that I'm like trying to close. But yeah, it's a very interesting place to be because now I have the examples, right? I know a bunch of wealthy individuals, like personally, like I can sit there, call them and have a conversation with them. I deal with people every single day and they're just people, right? Some people I've come to realize, and the more that I interact with people, it's like some people have a lot of money, but they don't have a lot of common sense. Like they don't have a lot of knowledge. There's not a lot of like technicality behind it. So I have a care for the person that I think that I need to be in this atmosphere. And that's not the case. Like, it's not. It really isn't.
Bro.
What is that for you? Like in your perspective, like where does your care come in terms of care that you feel like you shouldn't give?
Hold on. So take a step back real fast before we even dive into where my brain's at. I think we need to unpack your brain a little bit. That was a lot of shit. Um,
Yeah.
that was a lot of shit. So let's take a dive back. So when you were talking about like where does it come from, how did it form, and your need or desire to try to appease other people, I think a piece of that too. This is just a topic that maybe you can help me understand a little bit differently, but conflict management. It's not necessarily caring about what other people think. It's about caring how other people would react. If you're trying to help appease other people, you're only trying to help appease other people by ensuring you can mitigate, apprehension or conflict in the conversation. That's a piece of that. If you're, that because you mentioned something to do with the parental mindset of like, hey, you don't want to upset your parents or any parental like figures in your life. I think the other
Yeah.
side of it, and this comes from, I think, like, listen, Kevin and I's background, we're in retail, right? And the retail adage since day one has been like, the customer's always right. So we have been taught subconsciously to appease people based upon how we think something is going to go. That's where I would take a look at that. Like we don't realize it, but we started out in that atmosphere. And like
Yeah.
when we saw certain people come in and you hear tones of voice, you hear frustration. And to tackle the retail segment, like listen, there's a lot of great segments in retail that I think you can have a lot of fun in and that you can learn how to manipulate your way around in conversation through body language. But like we were in the automotive world, right? So most people who walked into our world were not happy, right?
No.
They were not
God,
happy they
no.
were there. They'd much rather spend money on, football tickets or going out to dinner or paying their light bill. So the majority of the people that we saw, man, were not really happy. And we had to learn how to, de-escalate conversation, deal with their personal frustrations, tell people indirectly that they were fucking stupid all
And
the
wrong,
time
because they're not
and
always right.
wrong.
There are
They're not.
customers that try to get over on businesses all the time. That person is not right.
Yeah, and listen, man, we were also younger as we kind of, at least I mean, we're both young now as it is, but like being young in the game, like you don't really know what that really means. Like not all customers are right. We already know that. But having to learn how to mitigate that through conflict management and trying to de-escalate, because you know that if we didn't handle a scenario properly, they were going to call the district manager or they were going to call customer care or whatever it was. And they're ultimately going to get what they want anyways. So like we had to learn how to de-escalate, and by de-escalating subconsciously we're caring about what we say, how we say it, how they react, if they see our body language. So like we were trained to do that, and we weren't physically trained through modules of life, but like we had to do that in order to make it and to survive. So I think a lot of what you said and caring about what other people think not only comes from parental influences in your life growing up, teachers, coaches, friends around us, right? That also comes from the career that we chose and that career path. And until we've gotten older and we've learned how to navigate the complexities of business and understanding that while they might not be right, telling them that they're right may help us de-escalate them and get them the fuck out of our business. So that way it doesn't turn into something silly, make other people feel uncomfortable. So like it's an art form, man. I don't think that you can't not give a fuck what other people think about you. Like you can go all out ditch to ditch, but I don't think any one person has truly mastered it in my opinion. And I
Yeah.
think that if they did, they'd be lying. Like you can not give a fuck about certain areas and parameters. The only way that I think you could not give a fuck about what people are, how they view you, the only way you can get super close to this would be to be wealthy, independently wealthy. Because at that point in time, you could tell anybody you wanted to go fuck off. It doesn't matter because you're wealthy, right? So I don't know that anybody's mastered it, to be honest, but I just wanted to dive into the conflict management piece of why you're here, because I think that plays a big role into it, in my opinion. And that's translates to your relationship with your wife, your parents, your grandparents, your best friend. Like that translates into everything, man. And I think that the other side of it too is that nobody likes criticism, any form of criticism, right? If you criticize somebody for what they believe or how they feel, they only become more convicted in what they believe or how they feel. Very few people are able to be self-aware and self-regulate. And I know we've talked about that a little bit in our previous episodes, but man, I mean, somebody tells me that I suck at something, man, and I know I suck at it. I can tell myself that, but if I hear from somebody else, it hurts a little bit. So I'm trying to digress that emotion to turn it off. Like, dude, you were absolutely correct. I suck at this. So let me get better. Right. And it's hard to turn that off for so long. It gets easier over time. But that's the other part of it too, man, is that I think that people just don't know how to take criticism. So, and we always have an explanation. We both do. You do, I do. If I were to tell you you sucked at this, you would give me an explanation as to why you're not good at it or why you think you're good at it. Like, we're always going to defend ourselves and defend our point of view through excuses. We're going to explain it.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
anyways, sorry. I just had to throw that out there. What was your question again?
No, honestly, man, from just kind of a quick comment about what you just said is I never thought about that. I really never thought about it from a work retail perspective because most of the time in that scenario, like from what I believe that scenario to be, it's like I don't really care. It didn't have any effect on me personally. In that customer service situation where you have somebody like pissed off, like it doesn't affect me. It's, I've always had that separation that it's not technically my business, right? So that's the way I thought about it. But in reality, what you said is true and it makes perfect sense. But the question that I had for you, which is probably going to be worded differently, is what is something that you care about that you feel you shouldn't care about? What's something that you care about other people's opinions on or about? There's their topic. And also, by the way, for everybody, it's not just about caring in certain ways. Like we were having a little bit of a conversation beforehand because you can care about what someone thinks. If you're having self-deprecating behavior and not care about someone thinks and they're giving you advice to benefit you and you don't care when you should. So it doesn't happen. It happens both ways. There's multiple ways to care. Sometimes you care too much when you shouldn't. Sometimes you don't care enough. So there's a lot to go into, but specifically for this question, what is something that you probably care too much about that you shouldn't care in regards to other people and their opinions?
I guess, I mean, really to give you a specific example, dude, like, I'm a leader, right? I think we've talked about it a couple of times. I'm a multi-unit manager. And I've been a multi-unit manager for a long time. When you're working in an environment where people can see and understand who you are and where you come from, it's, face to face a lot. So like being a store manager, for example, you've been a store manager. I've been a store manager for a majority of my career outside of multi-unit. And when I'm trenches to trenches with people, belly to belly, working side by side, people get to know me daily, right? They understand that when I give feedback, I'm giving feedback from a good place because they know
Yeah.
that I truly care, right? When you start getting into multi-unit management and you start dealing with a different class of people, and when I say class, like it's just a different thought process, right? They're different leaders. They have different skill sets and their business acumen's on a different level. It's very hard for people to understand if the feedback that you're giving or the direction you're giving is from a genuine place. And I struggle with that because I truly want people to be a better version of themselves. And something that I've learned over the years as I've gotten older and more experienced, like I can't save everybody as much as I want to, right? And not only that, it's not that people necessarily need to be saved. Some people don't need to be saved and they don't care to be saved. And some people are okay with where they're at. And I think for me, being younger, like I took offense to that in regards to like, I'm just like, man, I'm just trying to help you be a better person, Kevin. Like I want you to be successful. I see the skills that you have, the skill set that you have. And I think that's why you and I clicked years ago. Like I've always told you, and I thought it was funny that your coaches said the same thing, that you could be a very powerful individual and be very successful, right? But the definition of success is different for everybody. So, but getting back to my original point, like as a leader, I just want people to win, man. I want people to win. I want them to be better versions of themselves. I want their lives to be easier. I want them to make more money. That's it. And when people don't see that direction and take feedback that way, it bothers me. Essentially, it bothers me with how I think they view me because I feel like you and I have had leaders, we've had district managers before, vice presidents that we've worked for, that you just feel like they're fucking blowing smoke up your ass. Like they don't give a shit about you.
Yeah.
They're just telling you the elevator speech because if you win, they win, right? And selfishly,
Mhm.
that's true. If you win and I'm your boss, I win too. Selfishly, I understand that. But that's not how I'm motivated. And it bothers me that people think that that's how I'm motivated. Am I going to win all of them over? No. I'm aware of that. My job is to win over Rome and to win over the general population. The only way I do that is by acts of generosity and acts of pure intention. So that takes time to build, but man, I struggle with that a lot. And when you hear feedback from other people, and whether it's rumors or gossip that they feel like I'm being disingenuous or I don't care or no truth in what I'm saying to you right now, it eats at me. So that's one example. I'm self aware of it, trying to find ways to regulate it, and I'm also trying to find ways to change people's perception. But I was told something a long time ago that rings true to this day, and finding a way to navigate this line is extremely tough. But it doesn't matter what you're actually doing in life; it matters what people think you're doing. So as a leader, it doesn't matter what I'm doing; it matters how people think I'm doing and how they perceive what I'm doing. And if they perceive incorrectly and that spreads, then you've lost the game. So to your point earlier, like not giving a fuck what people think is a powerful conversation, right? But there's also places that you've got to care what people think to an extent, right? And it just depends on the environment that you're in. So, like, I don't know how we'll navigate this conversation, but from my job's perspective, how people view me is important because I'm their leader. I'm the one defending them, going to bat for them. I'm the one getting and creating a business plan or executing the business plan for them. And I need them to know that it comes from a good place. I want them to win. I want them to have a better quality of life, and that takes time to build, but that's what keeps me up at night.
That's interesting because from your perspective, like I know and I fully understand. Like I know you personally, we've known each other for a few years. I was there during the grind because in your mind, I fully understand. You're like, hey, I'm at this position now, but literally 5 years ago, I was you. Like I'm you 5 years from now, if that's what you so choose. But people don't see it that way. They see
No,
you now. They see you walk in the building. You're a guy that shows up once a month. You're a guy that shows up every once in a while. I don't know what your interval is to visit your stores, but like you're just that random person that, hey, when this person comes in, we all need to.
yeah, they don't look at it, and that rings true. I'm sure everybody on here listening or watching, man, has come across it. Like like when we look at the Hollywood highlight reel for people who have been successful, like we only see where they're at now. And we
Yeah.
all talk about it, right? We all talk about the Hollywood highlight reel of these actors and these athletes that are making millions of dollars, and we're envious of them, and we're oh, that guy's a POS, man. He makes $75 million and he's not playing because his toes hurt. Like, who cares? Like, I don't care, right? They grinded for years. They sacrificed something in order to get where they're at. And they're also selfishly taking care of themselves. And that's what they should do. Like, people are just so blind to all that. So, like, the Hollywood highlight reel does exist. And I am victim to that occasionally where I'm like, man, this dude is grinding, bro. Like, or he grinded, he's making a shit ton of money. And like, we don't know what it took him 15 years to even get to the point where he was even at the table to speak, not even make it, but 15 years just to get the fucking table to speak. So we all fall victim to that trap every now and then. It's our job to get ourselves out of that. But yeah, man, like you and I work side by side. I personally took an interest in you and we became friends throughout the way. Did I want to beat my head against the wall when I was trying to impact you a long time ago? Fuck yeah. God, if anybody wants to know Kevin is a stubborn motherfucker. I'll say that. I'm sure
We
your
need to
wife would
talk
agree
about
with
that a
that.
little bit because I definitely appreciate I definitely appreciate that, and I can tell you, and we can kind of talk about this from I guess where I was at that point, and then the impact that you may have had on my life because you had a different impact on me than I did on you. Because I feel like from just conversations that we had, like I was more of a challenge for you, like a challenge that an obstacle that needed to be overcome. Like I was part of your leveling up, right, in leadership. That's what I feel. I don't know that for a fact, but just from our conversation, that's where I feel like I stand. Whereas like from you, from my perspective, like you were that that like clear juxtaposition of a different option. Like you were the person that I looked at and I was like, holy shit. Like not everyone's an asshole. You can be a good leader. People can actually like you and you can get people to grow. Growth is a thing. Like, you were the person that introduced that to me. So I think we serve different roles in each other's lives back in the past. And I'd like to talk about that one day. It doesn't have to be now, but just want to put
No,
that
it's a
out
good
there.
conversation. I would say you'd be surprised what you were for me because it wasn't that. You were a challenge for sure, but it wasn't a challenge for personal gain. I deal with that every day. So I just wanted you to see what you were capable of, and it bothered. It goes back to what I previously said. It bothers me that
Yeah.
people, that you think that I'm being. Somebody thinks that I'm being hardcore, but like, listen, man, I saw your potential, raw or not, right? Didn't understand or know what that was going to turn into, but I just felt like this motherfucker's smarter than me. Like I've said it numerous times on this podcast, and I'll continue to say it. I'm not a smart person. I know when people are smart around me, and that's the whole law. It's called the law of mastermind, right? Think and grow rich, law of mastermind. So like I'm aware of that, but like I'm like, dude, if I had this dude's intelligence and coupled with emotional intelligence, like I could be fucking powerful, right? So like I was trying to let you see that, so that way you could be a better version of me. That's it. But what role you played in my life is definitely not the role you just said for sure, and you'd be surprised. We'll talk about it later. But
Interesting.
um,
Interesting.
getting back to not giving a fuck what other people think. So you already covered talking about what other people think and why it's not necessarily a good thing to not give a fuck, a little bit briefly, right? You already discussed that you do care what people think about you and that you're trying to get better at it. What about caring what other people think in terms of selfish happiness? Like, what does that mean to you?
Ooh, interesting. Okay. So, first off, I don't think that there's anything selfish about your personal happiness, period, right? Unless it comes at a cost to someone else. When you sacrifice someone else for your happiness, we'll call it selfish. But if it's just my personal satisfaction and it has no impact or influence on anyone else, it ain't selfish. That's R&R, we'll call it, right? So, from this perspective, sometimes when someone as an individual, let's just say me, I take an action that is going to satisfy me, that's going to make me happy, that's going to build my future, is going to build my satisfaction. Someone else may think differently about what I need to do and what I should be doing, right? Based on their perspective, based on their inputs. And this is going to tie into something a little bit else because it comes with like a level of success. There's certain things that you need to do and certain actions you need to take. But in this specific example, if I do something to succeed, if I do something to be happy and it's just for me, right? I don't care. I never cared. I never do. Like it's not a sacrifice to you. This is what makes me happy. This is what I want to do. Always. I've never had an issue with it, right? Where other people perceive it to be selfish, not my problem. I've literally never had an issue with that. Never. I don't think so. Not to where it affects other people. So when it comes to my personal satisfaction, if I'm taking an action and I'm doing something for me to make me happy or the way that I want to do it, as long as it's not something that's self-deprecating in a sense, it don't matter. Like it really doesn't. And I don't think I've ever struggled with that to a certain extent. But what I have learned over time is when it comes to success, and there are things that make me happy in the goals that I want to achieve, right? So there are things that I need to sacrifice, which other people may not be willing to sacrifice, or other people may not want to be sacrificed, may not want to sacrifice. What I chalk that up to is very simply, I'm going to do something different to get to where you're not, right? Therefore, if you're not where I want to be, your opinion of my actions doesn't matter, period. It doesn't matter because you're not willing to do what I'm willing to do to get to where I want to be. And that's something that you're going to run into as you scale up, as you succeed. So, for example, let's just talk from a friend's perspective, right? I had a group of friends who used to hang out all the time, used to go out every single weekend. At this point in my life, I cannot hang out with that group of friends, right? I cannot go out with them. I cannot sit there and talk and text and go back and forth because I have things that I'm trying to achieve. That doesn't matter, right? They may think of it as selfish. Oh, he's just important to what he wants to do. But in
Yeah,
reality,
you're a,
yes.
you're a you're an asshole. Fuck you.
In reality, yes, because I'm trying to achieve something and you're not helping me achieve it. Therefore, it's not important. It's not selfish. It's not selfish to me because this is what I want to achieve. it's selfless for me. Like this is what I want to do. I want to make sure that this is how I get there. I don't care about you. I don't care about other people. If you're going to help me and you want to join this road with me, you want to help me build, you want to have this conversation, you want to talk on every Saturday, and you want to have, hey, this is what I'm doing to grow my business. What are you doing to grow your business? And you want to interact with me in that way? Absolutely, 100%. Here's my time. Let's do it together. But if it's one of those things where this is going to take away from what I'm doing, like I don't give a shit. It can be selfish to you. It's not selfish to me. It's just what I need to do. My actions are going to lead me to a certain direction. Your actions are going to lead you to a certain direction. If that direction isn't the same, we're not doing it. And it's the same thing with like you and me. We had a period of time where we didn't necessarily talk. You were growing in your environment, your business, where you're doing, you lived out of state. We weren't necessarily doing something that was in the same direction. Obviously, you were going in a corporate ladder. I changed direction, started going into real estate. Our paths didn't cross too much, right? But now here we are in a situation where we both want to grow ourselves individually, right? And now we're back at a crossroads. We're at a place where your career and my career kind of interact, not in a career perspective, but like we're here having a podcast. We want to benefit other people. We want to help people grow. We want to enlighten other people. Like I know that there's family members that in my family watch this that I don't talk to. I still love and care for you 100%. It's not that I don't, and I always will, but I can't take the time to talk to you right now. It's just I can't, right? I have so much things going on. Like it's a Saturday morning right now. I'm not relaxing. I'm not having fun. I was up at 8 o'clock in the morning. I was up until like 11 o'clock working last night. I can't. Like that's just where I am, and I don't see that as selfish. I really
Yeah,
don't see that as selfish.
people mistake that a lot, man. Like just that very thing when you said it. Like, listen, I've moved 1,000 miles away, and it's not that I don't love my family or care for my family, but I also feel like you're at a point in time where your mind can be corrupted, man. And for me personally, like I know that I'm in this journey alone, right? And there's been multiple people that have told me, dude, all the way up back and sorry, dad, you probably didn't mean it this way, but man, when I was 17, turning 18, I got kicked out of my house. I really get kicked out. He didn't physically kick me out and say, fuck you, get out of my house, but he gave me an option. He gave me an ultimatum. Like, you're either going to do it this way or get out. Right. And I said, well, pretty much fuck you. I'm going to get out. But then I also remembered like I wanted tattoos and I've wanted tattoos all my life. And there's a reason for that. Number one, I like them and I fucking love them. But the second thing too, like, I don't think people realize this. And I got this from a book, Can I Say by Travis Barker. And he talks about the same thing that I talked about. And I love Travis Barker. It was like, dude, if I get heavily tattooed, hands, knuckles, neck, whatever, like there's no turning back from that. Like there's no turning back. And like, you're either going to be really fucking good or you're going to be average and you're not going to get paid and you're going to suffer. So like for me, tattoos were also a way for me to back myself into a corner so I could claw myself out because it was going to force me to become better. Like if I just walked around wearing a tie, in a polo shirt with a Tommy Hilfiger emblem, as a normal dude, no offense, because you guys can be normal and do your thing. I don't give a shit. I could have been average Joe with a family of two, driving a Honda Accord, with my 4-bedroom house in Leave It to Beavers neighborhood. I chose that. I wanted to go against the grain and go against that route. And I purposefully made my life harder, right? And I was told I was going to be nothing for it. I wasn't going to be successful. It's going to be hard to find a job. I mean, the same old shit that, you heard 10 years ago, 15, 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago, right? So I chose that path, for myself, and I wouldn't change a damn thing. But where I'm going with this is if I allow myself the ability right now at my stage in life to surround myself with those who are average, and there's nothing wrong with being average, by the way, so don't mistake this conversation, but then I could very well end up average for the rest of my life. So, because if you start to put yourself in that type of conversation and that type of circle, like, and I think we talked about this in a couple episodes ago as well, like people start making excuses. They start talking about politics and why they don't make enough money and why they're broke and why the government should be this leader versus that leader. And like, none of that matters. But they tell themselves that every day and they surround themselves with those type of people every day. So being involved in that conversation for me is like exposure to the average mind that I don't want to be. I don't want to make excuses. I want to figure it out. If inflation goes up, I'll figure it out. If the cost of a house goes up, I'll figure it out. If the hourly wage doesn't move for 10 years, I'll figure it out. I don't care. Like
Yeah.
we just put so many obstacles. So most of the people and the family members talk about those things. I got ridiculed, indirectly. Nobody like scorned me about it, but I got the stupid feedback of why I'm homeschooling my kids. You shouldn't do that. They're not going to be okay. They're not going to be intelligent. They're not going to make it in life. Like I got all of that feedback, and you know what? Who gives a fuck what you think? Because you're not right. We know that, right? You're not right, and it's going to be okay. But because they've been conditioned that way, their
Yeah.
point of view matters to them, right? So I just alienate myself so that way I don't have to put myself in that position to have that conversation, because I'm not going to be the guy that's going to give you the analytics of why my children are going to be smarter than yours or why I'm going to be more successful than you. Like I don't owe anybody that conversation, truthfully. I really don't. I just don't. And I don't need to tell my dad that I'm going to be successful or my mom that I'm going to be successful because of A, B, and C, because A, they may not even believe it because that's their thought process. And B, who cares? I don't care.
Okay, so this is something that actually happened yesterday, and it was very interesting because it's the first time that it became clear to me how different of a human being I am now than I was. I don't even know X amount of years ago. It doesn't matter, but I'm just curious to see if you've run into this example. So yesterday I had to go. I was out pretty much all day. I had to go stop somewhere and grab something to eat. Right, I'm sitting down by myself at a table eating food. There's a group of individuals that walk in. These individuals are gossiping, right? And as I'm sitting there, they're gossiping loud. It's clear, like, they're there. There's a group of individuals, and you can hear them having conversations. That's repulsive. Like, to me, that's repulsive. Like, I was sitting there, I was like, I need to hurry up and eat to get the fuck out of here so I can stop listening to this shit because I'm getting dumber by the moment as I'm
Yeah.
literally
Oh
sitting there.
yeah.
Have you run into that situation?
Yeah, man, and I think 100%. I think that we talked about this on a previous episode, and throughout my career, like of course you have to mingle, right? You've got to
Yeah.
build relationships and rapport. And one thing that I struggle with now, terribly, right, is that I don't want to say that I can't be fake, right? Because that would insinuate that other people are fake. So I'm not insinuating that, but like I don't want to participate in those type of conversations. Right. I don't, because somebody's gossiping about me right now, right? At a dinner table, at a lunch table, at a breakfast table, somebody's gossiping about me. And I don't think it's right for me to gossip around them. So I struggle with that because no matter what you say, somebody's gossiping about somebody. And we're making fun of somebody indirectly or directly. We're laughing about somebody. Like I struggle with that because some people need that. So like I have to build relationships with people and rapport with people who are making fun of somebody else, right? And it may not be making fun like we're deflating their character, but like we're just like, hey, look at that dude's hair. It looks fucked up, right? Ha ha. Like somebody's doing that about me too, man, right? So like I struggle with that piece of it. And I try to stay out of those conversations as much as possible. But on the other side, and then in the same breath, like some people you've got to do that with because that's how they build rapport. That's their love language or that's their professional language of how they communicate with people. And
Yeah.
good, bad, or indifferent, you couldn't tell them that. You have to, like, they're just not self-aware. They can't self-regulate. So like you've got to gossip to an extent, but I struggle with that wholeheartedly because like, man, like not only do I feel dumber, but like, what's the point? It's
I
stupid
have a
conversation.
perfect answer for that.
Go.
A perfect answer for that. And I've learned this very recently, and it's helped me a lot. And it's the phrase, I see how you could feel that way. Or I understand how someone could feel that way. Or I understand that externally that is an opinion that someone else can have. Either way, whatever it is, just word it to an external person. Like, I understand that someone else has this feeling, right?
Right.
Not me. I don't. I don't care. I'm not putting myself in any situation or in any boat, just making it an external thing. Like, oh, yeah, that's an emotion that humans have. Not me, not right now, but putting it that way has been a very big, I guess, unlock, because it's the ability for me to relate, but not relate at the same time. Because if I personally relate, then it becomes a thing that I'm doing. But if it's like, hey, I understand that people do that, now it's like, oh, okay, cool. Like I get it, I understand, and it's not internal anymore. It's external. So that's been
Yeah,
that's
that's
been
a
a
good
good one.
point. I like that. I'm probably starting to use that because I mean, listen, man, it goes back to not caring what people think and caring to an extent. Like, depending, unless you are, successful and you're a multimillionaire and you're independently wealthy, you can do whatever the fuck you want, say whatever the fuck you want. The other side of it is like, okay. let's talk about something differently, right? So we've talked about people who know who Kevin is or who Kirk is, right? And for those of you who are out there, I think the biggest reason why we're here in this conversation right now is that every one of you guys or gals is struggling with what people think about you, some way, shape, or form, whether it's financial thoughts, physical thoughts, mental thoughts. Like somebody cares about you, doesn't care about you, will make a comment about how you dress, whatever it may be, right? What you look like, what your house looks like. Like, I get it. We're all there, all right, including myself. So that's the why. But the other aspect that I want to dive into as we go into this why we're here is something that you said earlier, Kevin, that I find to be interesting. When you're cold calling people, why do you care what people think about you? And the only reason why I'm prefacing this conversation right now is because of what you told me that helped us start this conversation back in November when I was in Florida for that week of vacation, right? It's different to care about what people think about you that you're close with, that you work with every day, right? Because
Yeah.
they're in your life every day. But then it's also different equally to think about the person that you're coming in contact with when you're walking through the grocery store and you're not telling them how you really fucking care or really don't care. They don't even know you. And chances are you're never going to run into that person again. Chances statistically, you may run into them at the gas station, but like let's play the stats here. Like Jacksonville's metro population is exceeding 1 million people, right? And even the people that you live close by in the area in the DMA that you live in, like unless it's your fucking neighbor, the dude at the gas station or the local ABC isn't going to probably see you again. So
Yeah.
you're cold calling. Walk me through like why do you care what people think about you when you're cold calling them? And chances are they may never buy from you. So why does it matter?
To be honest, I don't really know how to answer that because I haven't quite figured it out, man. There was a situation that I was put in a couple of weeks ago that literally, when I look back at it, I'm like, fuck, why am I not like that? And again, like, I don't understand. Like, I
Give me
haven't
the
completely
situation.
figured it out. It's, I'll tell you in just a second, but for me, like, when it comes to that, I think that it has to do with like people's perception of me, and I want to be looked at in a certain way, and I'm like, I guess I have a fear for not being good enough. Really, that's where I think it comes from, is a fear of just like not being good enough, or a fear of rejection is really what apparently that's hello that brings. But I haven't quite pinpointed it. I'm gonna go ahead and say
Listen,
that it's like fear of rejection, but I haven't quite pinpointed it. It's just like everything kind of points to that, and I just haven't sat down and figured that out with myself.
listen, I'm
But the
not perfect at
situation that
this.
happened, huh?
I want to make a comment before you tell the story real fast, and I just want to make you
Yeah,
think, and maybe this will tie into your conversation, right? And I'm going to fuck up this quote or this conversation, but so I heard it the other day, but I heard it like 10 years ago too. That's kind of helped me progress in this field of not giving a fuck what people think about you. And it's like, dude, like we're so worried about what other people think about us, right? We know that. That's
yeah,
the whole caring. But the
yeah,
other person in the fucking grocery store is also thinking the same thing. So they're not thinking about you. They're thinking about what you think of them. So they don't
yeah,
even notice you. They're just thinking about the same fucking thing you're thinking about. So why does it matter?
yeah.
Just think about that for a second. But go ahead. Go ahead. Tell me your
And
situation from a few weeks
it may
ago.
tie into the story. So either way, last week it was the TPC. I was at the my brokerage had a TPC party. We were hanging out. One of my other co-brokers, we went out, went to Publix. He grabbed a drink, and then we were kind of just sitting there talking. And he was telling me about, hey, I called this person, and this individual, I don't know, like they think differently than I do. And it's just very clear. I don't understand the reason why. I just know that their mentality is beneficial to the target that we're both trying to agree to or get to. And my mentality isn't. It's just that is the very clear thing that happened. But we were just talking. This person was calling someone and they were on vacation. It was like, hey, let me call this person, yada, yada. Hey, let me introduce them. And there was a short phone call. And from what he told me, it's like, hey, there seemed to be some noise in the background, and this person was like, yeah, no, I'm not interested, and then they hung up, right? That situation I would have perceived completely differently. And this is where the like it just became too clear that I'm the problem, because this person basically just said, hey, no, I'm not interested. And really at the end of the day, like, hey, all right, cool, I'm not interested in having this conversation. I get it. Cool, you're not. Bye, end of story. That's where I would have ended it. I'd been like, all right, cool, whatever. And this person that is my coworker that has a different attitude and mentality that I do, and honestly, this is something that I need to get better at 100%. Just like it's hooray on them. But They literally took the time, sent a text message. Hey, it sounded like you were busy. I wouldn't have picked up on that shit. I wouldn't have done anything. Like I would have just been like, oh, this fucker doesn't want to deal with me, right? Like that's just it. And they took the time, sent a text message and say, hey, I'm such and such. It sounded like you were busy, yada yada. Turns out they had a great conversation. This person was on vacation. There was conversation there that was built in where I would have perceived you don't want to deal with me. I'm some sort of taking away from your time. I'm not doing what I'm supposed to. Like I didn't like I would have perceived that as a negative thing on my behalf. This person didn't. And it's the
All right.
same situation. Like they really just took
Make sure I understood what you're going real fast. So, in other words, you're with this guy. Guy called somebody,
yeah.
and they pretty much told him to go pound sand in a nice way because they were on
Right.
vacation and they didn't have time, right? And
Yeah,
then
he didn't
he
know
took the
any of that
time.
beforehand.
Okay.
It was
Yeah.
just the go pound sand portion or like, no, I don't want to talk or I can't talk right now or just like go away. That was a brief conversation. They were busy, bad signal. The only thing that happened in the actual conversation was, hey, how you doing? I wanted to talk to you about this. And essentially, like, I can't talk right now. This isn't, this isn't the time. Let's not do this. I don't want to do this. Right. That was, the gist of the original conversation. This is where my process would have gone to a negative portion, a negative sense. This person went to, they're busy, they're occupied, they're doing something. This is like where the mindset diverges, right? The initial need to reach out is the same, the conversation to reach out is the same, the reason to reach out is the same. That initial response, boom, completely different deviation. They were like, this person's busy, they're doing something, let me go ahead and just send them a message. More positivity, more, I don't know, just like opportunity there. Like they just didn't kill that moment for themselves in
So,
that
in
in
other
that time frame.
words, they weren't impacted by the feeling that
No.
that could have been felt.
Yep.
They just they bounced it off, bro. They let it. They
They
had the
literally bounced it
armor
off
on.
and went, "Hey, this
They
is such and
had
such. This is
fucking
what I
armor
wanted to
on.
do."
That's
And, like,
powerful,
it
man.
just became clear to me because 'cause I'm sitting there looking at this person, I'm like, "That makes perfect fucking sense. That's an opportunity that I 100% would have lost. Why don't I do that?" And it started, like and it comes back to caring to a certain extent. Like, there was something there that caused me to care or feel a certain way when it shouldn't have. Because this
I
wasn't
mean,
my situation, but I can replicate that in a situation that I've had where I could have just been like, "Oh, okay, they're just fucking busy. Here, let me send them a message real quick." Right? But they have like, I don't know if it's something that happened to me. Like, I don't know if it's something that like put me in a situation where just like I have a negative opinion about this type of
I was gonna
situation, but it's like
say,
very clear.
here's why it happened, right? So you have. I mean, listen, our brain is put on a loop mode, and that loop mode is to protect us from negative influences or PTSD, right? So, like, if you have a flashback of somebody scolding you, or where you felt inferior, like your body or your brain, until you rewire your software, is going to tell you, like, man, I'm a piece of shit, and you feel that feeling. You feel that feeling. It's like your body and your nervous systems and your emotions are bringing you back to a moment that you had felt in your past that made you feel inferior, right? And I'll give you an example of that. So, like, you've been in retail, I've been in retail. How many times, as a leader, as a manager, have you been called and you're like, hey, customer wants to speak to a manager, right? Countless times. And how many times, like, as you're making that walk from the back of the store to the front of the building, are you playing in your head that this dude or this woman is going to wear your ass out? And you're just like mentally preparing yourself to go on defense to protect yourself,
Pretty regularly.
right? Pretty regularly. Same thing for me. So, like, you know, and where I figured this out, and I still fall victim to this today, right? But I try to think about it a little bit differently, and it really just came from like the whole David Goggins mentality, right? For those of you who know who David Goggins is, he's a fucking warrior, mentally and physically, and what I've tried to put into place for myself is like, if I wanted to run away from that shitty conversation, like, oh, I don't want to fucking deal with this right now. No, I'm going to turn back around and I'm going to go deal with it. And I'm trying to keep myself um, as neutral as possible, because where there's smoke, there's fire. Granted, the person may go off the deep edge and yell at you and try to belittle you, but there's a reason why they feel that way. And my job, and you can use this with customers, you can use this with employees or associates that may work for you, or you work for them, whatever it may be. Like, my job is to understand where you're coming from in that conversation, right? But at the first, I'm like, fuck, like, we're defending our team. We care about who we are. We care about our pride. We care about making sure that we're not mistaken for weakness. So like we care about so many different angles in that conversation that we go up there and we're ready to fight. We're ready to protect our fort, instead of trying to understand where that person's coming from. And granted, that customer or that person who's yelling at you, that associate or that friend who's getting crazy with you, they also care. They have something to care about, whether it's their financial gain, whether it's their finances because they're broke and they can't afford this right now for it to be defective or bad. Like they care too. So trying to understand and find common ground in there without a preconceived notion of how things are going to happen, is where you can find a superpower. And the only reason why we feel that way is because it's a traumatic experience that happened in the past. Somebody yelled at us, made us feel like a pile of shit. They belittled us. You know what? You could go on with the whole list. Like because we have that preconceived notion and we care about what happened previously, we're artificially defending our territory to protect ourselves without understanding what's going on. We're only seeking to be understood versus to understand. Right. So like that brings up a whole different dynamic. And that's where that shit comes from, is you had a prior traumatic incident that happened to you that made you feel like you were less of somebody, you were stupider, or you are stupider, or you are inferior, whatever it may have been, dude. When you break down those moments and you feel that way at that time, you have to like circumvent that and rewire that system in your brain that says like, dude, like, I don't even know who the fuck this guy is on the phone. And chances are I'm never going to see him again. Why do I let that rent space in my brain? Right. I think we all understand the why we're here is because we all fucking care about what other people think about us. Right. Here's one of the tips that I'm using to this day. And then maybe that you can unpack your angle on this, because I've looked at your notes on where you're going with this, but like I have looked at this in two different ways, right? So first and foremost, from a Stoic perspective, I love Stoic philosophy and I love listening to it. And there's a quote, a Latin quote, it's memento mori, right? And that simply means remember you could leave life right now. And that's not to be negative or dark, but that's like, it's more or less like, hey, dude, you can die tomorrow. You can die next week. So like, stop caring about what other people think. Stop caring about all these artificial things outside of you. Like just do what you love, do what you're passionate about, do what you believe in, and don't let the fear of somebody else's perception of something stop you from doing what you want to do. All right. So that's one angle that I look at. That I have a coin. Ryan Holiday, he's an author who talks about Stoic philosophy, has really coined and kind of created the largest, following of Stoic philosophy for modern day. So I have a coin that I carry around with me. That's a reminder. And I carry this with me and I put it in my pocket every day, no matter where I'm going. Right. Whether it's work, whether it's personal. And I use this in every moment of time, in a restaurant, to where I can stand up for what I believe in, right? Where necessary, as a constant reminder. The other side of it is I look at theories, right? So for me, you and I had discussed previously gamers theory. Well, I'm not going to divulge into gamers theory specifically, but what I will say, and this is going to sound really fucking corny, but follow me real fast. Like, I don't believe life is a simulation specifically, right? But I do believe in my head it's a simulation. So what I mean by that is, as I'm walking around people, unless I'm interacting with you face to face and I'm working with you, the rest of the people that are walking around me in the grocery store, at the restaurant, whenever I feel awkward about something, I literally just think about a simulation. Those individuals are not real. They are robots, or they are being controlled by something else, and they're just walking in front of me for scenery. That's it. That's how I perceive things. And that for me is like my, I don't want to say my defense against myself, but you
Your way
understand
to
where I'm
detach
going.
from it.
Yeah, that's my way. That's my way to detach. Like everybody around me doesn't matter, and they're just the Sims game in front of me, walking around doing their thing just for a landscape. Right. That's how I'm overcoming this whole caring what others think about me. Unless that person is coming into direct contact and we're having a conversation, and I need them for something in that conversation, whether it's at a restaurant, whether I'm buying a car, buying a gun, whatever, and I'm actually physically doing something, we're in a fucking simulation, ladies and gentlemen. So stop caring about what other people think about you. That's my mindset. And that's what I'm trying to convey to my wife and to other people. It's like, just stop. Just do it. And like, there's been times, Kevin, where I've had to turn around because I felt awkward in a conversation, right? Like, I'll give you a small example. Like, I'm a jack of all trades, master of none. And what I mean by that is like, I love cars. But I don't know cars like maybe you do when it comes to Hondas. Like, you know, Hondas to a T. Like, I've been in the Honda scene. I know terminology that I could talk my way through, but I am not a master of that conversation. Same thing with
Yeah.
guns. I love guns. I love blowing shit up. But could you and I have a conversation about rifles and barrel size and length and ammunition? Like, no, dude. Like, you know what I know how to do? I can break my gun down. I can build it. I can clean it. I understand how things operate. I know how the firing pin works. I know how the bolt carrier group works, right? But I'm not like a master at it. So, and sometimes I let that get in my way when I go in to buy a gun or I go in to buy a car and like somebody gets in front of me and they're a Mustang lover, right? And by the way, I have a Mustang. I love it. I've wanted that car for a long time. But they'll start talking about all these fucking specs. And for some reason, I would let that intimidate me. And I'm like, dude, I don't have time to like be a fucking Mustang lover. Like, I'm on to different things. I'm passionate about these conversations. I'll research those, and I'm really good at. I could talk to you hours about psychology, people, leadership, stuff like that. Like, that's my game. But I
Yeah.
also love those other things. So, and I would let that rent space in my head. If you could speak to me and know more about Hondas, like, I'd feel inferior about that years ago. Now I don't. I don't care. It's not my game. It's not my wheelhouse. So I like to go fast. I'm fucking Ricky Bobby. That's what I like. Okay. Let's be truthful. Do I give a shit about the fucking gear ratio in the transmission? No, I don't have time for that right now. Could I when I get older and I have stupid money? Yeah, man. Maybe I'd read for hours about gear ratios and, first to second and supercharger specs and boost specs. Yeah, but dude, I don't have time for that right now. I'll get there, but right now I don't care. So I've learned to understand that simulation. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
So tell me your thought process. So we've talked about outside external factors. We've kind of talked about some internal factors a little bit. And I talked about, what I perceive to be simulation theory for right now. And again, I'm not going to divulge into that because somebody else on a podcast can speak about simulation theory. But what about you, man? Like, we were talking about gamers theory earlier and how that works and other people. Like, where's your head at with that? What crossroads are you at in that conversation with yourself?
I mean, really just that last example, man. Like, honestly, that was just like a fucking slap in the face. Because really, right there, right then at that moment, I'm just like looking over. I'm like, I'm fucking myself over. Like, this is 100% me shooting myself in the foot for no reason. So I'm
Kevin,
literally in the process of figuring that out.
you never answered my question, by the way, because I probably didn't let you. But let's take a step back. What was the phrase that you told me that got this podcast started?
Childlike aspirations.
If you had childlike aspirations, what was the other half of that, though?
It's, so the childlike aspirations, we've talked about it before. You have to have childlike aspirations in what it is that you want to achieve. And the reason I made it that way and the reason I said it that way specifically to you was simply because outside of that, you introduce logic. When you introduce logic, your brain is now filtering it through your filter, which is what's happening to me. Right.
Okay.
So when you introduce logic, you shoot yourself in the foot. You bring in your self doubt. You bring in everything that your mind perceives. When you have a childlike aspiration, children don't know boundaries because they haven't built up those walls. So when I say have childlike aspirations, you need to have logic in your plan. But whatever it is, like I was actually talking about it with my wife the other day. I was talking about it with Mita. We are the only creatures that can think something and make it reality. Like we literally had this conversation the other day. Like imagine if your dog could think about something and make it reality. It'd be fucking terrible, right? So the childlike aspiration is the ability to think and the ability to create. We then filter that through whatever it is that we filter it through. We filter it through life. We filter it through whatever experiences we've had. And then we choose whether or not that can be reality. When in reality, if it's like physically possible, we can make it happen. It could take forever. It could take a long time. It could not take a long time. It really just depends on what you're trying to achieve. But we need to have childlike aspirations. If it's possible, that can be the thing. The goal needs to not have a filter through possibility and just not possibility, but our perception of possibility. And just like, is it physically possible? Can it be done? Everything else after that is what you have to build a plan around to make it happen.
So I want you to take a step back and listen to what you just said, right? So childlike aspirations, and then we introduce logic, right? If it wasn't for you in the same conversation that you had with me in November, we wouldn't be here right now. And we still have a long way to go, right? I think,
Of course.
we have a long way to go. I think you have to use that same mindset and ideology back on yourself when it comes to caring what other people think about you. Like if you were to take out logic and you were to just to understand and have those childlike aspirations, like outside of peer pressure and going to school. And that's why my kids don't go to school, by the way. It's a whole other conversation, but they don't understand what other people think. They're not exposed to that. So they can be genuinely who they want to be. And that makes them more powerful than other people, in my opinion, right? Just because we are a product of the environment that we've been placed in. And that environment, whether healthy or toxic, can shape your future. So for my children, the environment's healthy. For my children, they're not exposed to the toxicity of the world and the bullshit on of the world. They see it through a phone and they can see it, but they don't understand how other people may view them. They're just genuinely themselves. So for you, same concept. And this is for me. I'm trying to take on my own advice as well and continue to master this. But like you've got to come to a point where like say what you really want to say, right? And not only that, I think the other side of it is we worry about how other people view us and if they find us to be successful or not in their own right. Because I think that you're talking to these millionaires, right? And you're talking to these real estate agents and these business partners that you've developed over the past few years. And you're looking at them with their millions of dollars, with their house, their car, whatever it may be. And you're thinking through their reality. And then you look at your house or your car or your scenario and you're like, I'm not there yet. So you may feel, and I could be speaking poorly on this, but you may feel inadequate and or inferior to where they're at. But the other side of it is like we see their Hollywood highlight reel. It's on Instagram. We see their Hollywood highlight reel because they're now successful. And some people who may become wealthy, it's been inherited, or they struck gold luckily, whatever it may be. But like nobody sees the world the way you see it, and you have to like give yourself credit where it's due, man, because there's many people who look up to you too that are around you that you wouldn't even know. And it goes back to the conversation I was saying earlier. Like you don't know what you did for me 6 years ago. You have no idea what you did for me. And we'll talk about that later, and that can be an intriguing conversation, but you just don't know how you impact other people. You just think you know how you impact other people. Is one scale. The other scale of it is like, dude, like the way millionaires look nowadays versus what they look like, 50 years ago is completely different. Like I think we have in our head that a millionaire is Warren Buffett and he walks around wearing a suit and a tie every single day, or Donald Trump, or whoever we want to use. Like that's our picture in our head of a millionaire. But how I see millionaires nowadays are people who are fucking tattooed, wearing a pair of skinny jeans and a t-shirt and a pair of Vans with a Yankees hat. We don't know who's wealthy and who's not wealthy. We think that somebody's walking around with holy jeans that maybe they don't have a lot of money, or they got dirty shoes on and they drive a fucking Ford F-150 that's beat up a little bit. We just think that based on the stereotypes of life that they don't have anything, and that's how we size them up. But what if they're the fucking millionaire and then the dude that's driving the Mercedes Benz is fucking broke, living paycheck to paycheck? And that's for me, that's like a whole nother conversation, because in my head, I want that Mercedes Benz. And in my head, I want to drive that Porsche, right? And I want to have that mansion. But what I don't know is that this dude's crying himself to sleep every other night because he's living paycheck to paycheck and he's miserable, and his wife's only with him because of money and she's cheating on him. Like, I don't know any of that. And that's probably a fucking reality. But because we have this ideology in our head that we think that that person's wealthy, that they must be successful, they're wrong, bro. And that's probably the hardest thing for me to overcome, is because I'm thinking while I'm in the car what that person thinks of me driving the car that I drive. And that's like, bro, what? Like, why am I feeling that way? And then I've learned statistically, and I think you and I have talked about this on the side, that 50% of people who make $250,000 a year are living paycheck to paycheck. And I'm like, holy shit, bro. Like, I don't want to live paycheck to paycheck, because you and I dreamed about making that type of money. And you're telling me that 5 out of 10 people who are making that type of cash are living paycheck to paycheck no differently than I was 5 years ago, living paycheck to paycheck. The only difference is the air conditioning in the car that they're in is different from mine, but they're no better than me. So that was a hard thing for me to unlearn. And that's still a hard thing for me to swallow when I look at other people, that we've got to say, fuck you, bro. Like, you might be driving a Mercedes, but you also might be living in a fucking trailer. And if that makes you happy, I'm happy for you. But the reality is, as you start looking at all these fucking trailers and mobile park homes and you start going into the hood, like, and hood is a subjective terminology, right? So, like, anything can be a hood. And you realize they have nice cars, but you follow them home and their fucking house is terrible. Like, they're working 3 jobs to pay for that fucking car. But I used to think that dude was wealthy because of the car he was driving. Does that make sense?
No, that makes absolute sense. And a lot of the things, like, that's why my goals have leveled up. Really, I told you guys before, I think it was on literally the first episode where we talked. I had a little sticker right here that I wanted to make $100,000 a year passively by the age of 45. I have since changed that goal because holy fuck, am I going to be broke if I make 6 figures, right? It needs to be more for what I actually wanted to achieve. The only thing is, like, my perception of money when I came up with that goal when I was 19 years old, I was like, I don't know anybody that really makes that amount of money. And all the people that do seem to be wealthy, when in reality, like, that's nothing. That is nothing. There are people out here that spit $100,000 for no fucking reason, and there's a lot of them. If you come from the hood, yes, that may be a lot to you. From where we come from, that may be a lot. When I was 10, I didn't know anyone that made millions of dollars. I didn't know anyone that made fucking $200,000 a year. I didn't. So it was a lot. But now that I'm here, now that I'm in this environment, I realize that this shit gets spit out like on accident. On accident. Like, literally, part of the deal that I was talking about with this other gentleman, like, something happened and the guy just spit out $100,000 extra for it. It was a fucking momentary decision. It was a boom, momentary decision. Boom, 100 grand gone, just like that. And this is not just one person. This is not just one person. Like, I speak to people absolutely 100% regularly. The environment that I'm putting myself in, it is normal to spend that amount of money. Given it's on investment, it's to make more money, yada, yada. The reason for it doesn't matter. But, we're talking people that are making, millions of dollars a month. Like, millions of dollars a month. I understand that there's people, I know people that are making $200,000, $300,000, $400,000 a month.
Right.
Right? Like, that's a different perspective. Like, one of the things that you're proud of, and I'm not going to shit on anything because it's still better than what I've gotten, but you were very proud to go from 22 to $44 an hour. That was a very big point. But then you think about that, and like, where you came from, you have a very good expectation, but then you put that next to somebody that makes $1,000 an hour and you're like, fuck. And then you put that next to another person that makes another $1,000 an hour and you're like, fuck. And then you put that next to another person that makes $5, $6, $7, $8, $9, $10,000 an hour, and you see that this is like a regular occurrence and it's a thing, and it's not just like a random thing. I mean, how many times have I asked for proof of funds on a property that somebody wants to buy, and I get a bank account? There was one person that made an offer on a property that was $300,000. $300,000. They sent me a proof of funds with a bank account for $19 million.
Incredible.
This is just a Tuesday. It's just a fucking Tuesday. And then you put this in a perspective, and like, then you actually interact with these people. I do interact with these people. I'm not talking about anyone specifically, but in different people, I can see different aspects where they're better and I'm better in certain things, in certain situations. Like, this person handles this emotion differently. This person thinks about this differently. This person reacts a little bit differently in this sense. And each person has their own advantage, just like on the lower end of the spectrum and the top end of the spectrum. When we're talking about income, it's very fucking different. But I've seen someone that is significantly more wealthier than I am, that I have what I feel to be a better attribute, right? Whether they have theirs for any reason, it doesn't matter. But like, dude, I don't even know how to explain it. Like, my perception has changed significantly from where I came from to where I am now, just because of the interaction. Literally just because of the interaction. Like, I fully see individuals that I feel are wealthier, but are not as maybe intelligent. I feel like they're not as emotionally disciplined, that they're not as anything. And yet
What's the difference
they're
between
enjoying
them,
their
though?
lives differently. Huh?
What's the difference? What do you? I think about that shit all the time, bro. I think that I'm not saying that I'm fucking smart by any means. There's plenty of intelligence that I can still gain, and we talk about emotional intelligence versus intellectual intelligence, right? I think that emotional IQ and being street smart is a lot more powerful than being book smart, right? Unless you're going to be a doctor or a lawyer or something like that, or an engineer, like, that's a different conversation. But what's the fucking difference? You come across people that you're more intelligent than. You have a better emotional IQ than them, but they're fucking wealthy and you're not. What's the
What they're
difference?
going after, man. What they're going
What they're
after
going
and what they
after is
think.
probably one, and what they think is probably number two, and then chances are number three. And this may have been a developed muscle, but in my opinion, it's the fact that they don't care about what other people think. Whatever they're doing, they don't care how other people perceive them, whether that's personally, professionally, intellectually, emotionally, logically, whatever, however you want to quantify that is up to you. But chances are, and this could have been developed after they became wealthy or before, but they don't care what people
Yeah.
think. I think caring about what other people think is stopping you because you're playing it safe. And I know that to be true for myself. Like I do care about what other people think, and I've gotten 10 times better than 5 years ago and 10 years ago. Right. And I wouldn't say that not caring either or caring has hindered me because I've gotten this far. If I look back at when the Social Security company or whatever, the Social Security administration sends you your annual breakdown every 10 years about how much money you've made, bro. The amount of money that I made, I could have never dreamed of 10 years ago as a high school dropout, hands down, bro, success. And it's only just begun, right? I'm only 33. So the goals I have in place, much like yourself, I've got goals by 45. I've got goals by 40. I've got goals by 38 that I want to hit, right? So I would have never thought that would have come true. So I don't want to say that, not caring and caring, like that's all subjective to where you're at in your life. But as I've gotten further, the less I care about what other people think, the faster that I make progress. That's an unlock. And I'm not there yet. I'm in a new role. I've only been on this role for a year now. I'm still with the same organization, and I'm still learning how to balance what other people think about me. Should I omit something from my conversation? Should I bring this topic of conversation up? So I'm still balancing that. And a lot of it is I'm a student to the game. So I'm just trying to understand what makes people tick, what turns people off in a conversation. So I'm still figuring all that out. I don't want to necessarily say it's about caring specifically of their mindset of me, because at the end of the day, selfishly, I've got my own goals outside of my organization that I want to achieve, and I will achieve those goals. But the unlock throughout this entire conversation is identifying that faster, so that way you can scale at a much faster rate of pace to your goals. And if you can do that without caring to an extent, like you still have to care about people and be genuine and be authentic, right? That's still a topic of conversation. I do care about the team that I lead. I care about the people that I work for, and I want to help them.
Yeah.
In any way I can, right? So that's the good side of caring. The bad side of caring is hiding your ability, hiding who you are, and not being true to yourself through the journey. That's the bad part of caring that you have to look at, right? And then the third thing I would say, and I'll give it back to you, would be like, we talked about the good side of caring, the bad side of caring, but then the third point that I would make would be when you're in public and the people you're around don't know you, won't know you, and you'll never run into them again, stop caring what people think, because you're not going to see them again. Don't let them rent space in your head. If you want to wear something, if you want to get tattooed, whatever it may be, whatever makes you happy, fucking do it, man. And stop caring about what that soccer mom at the grocery store is going to think when you walk by. Nobody cares, bro. And if you think they look better than you, or they're a better version of you, or they're more attractive than you, or they have a nicer car than you have no idea what they're going through. Their life could be fucking miserable on the inside, but on the outside, it looks like they got it all together, right? Where they look like they're an attractive person, but maybe they don't. Maybe they've got a nasty, huge scar that they're extremely self-conscious. Like, who the fuck knows, man? It's a simulation. Think about it that way. Unless you're directly talking to that person or impacting that person's life, it is a simulation. So go do you. That's my take. I don't know what you got,
Yeah.
bro.
No, I mean, honestly, I don't have much to add outside of the simple fact that literally, like, what you care about and how you care about it is literally your outcome. I mean, for me, that became very clear with the example with my coworker. Is like what I cared about and what I perceive is 100% affecting the amount of money that I can make. Period, point blank. I'm killing opportunities because of the way that I think and because of the way that I care. And it doesn't have to be that way. One thing that I have realized that is 100% clear in my mind is if one person can do it, anyone else can do it. You just have to be willing to do what that one person did. So It's possible. Anything's possible. If you've seen it, it can be replicated. You may have not seen it directly, but if one person did it, you can figure out a way to make it happen. We just kind of kill ourselves. And thank you for the feedback, honestly, because it is definitely something that sometimes you need to hear some stuff externally, even though it's like I have the knowledge already. It's just a matter of applying it to myself. That becomes very, very different. Sometimes we have to take our own advice, and that's usually the hardest part. But stop caring, man. Like, if it's your satisfaction, if it's where you want to be, where you want to get to, what other people think doesn't necessarily matter, unless they're going to help you get to where you're going, or unless they're giving you some sort of advice that will get you where you want to go. But always, the advice that you listen to has to be from someone that's achieved the goal that you wanted to achieve. If they did not achieve it, that advice is not good because it's not proven. Only proven advice is what you should care about. And there are people that want to help you, man. There really are. So there's some people that you should listen to their advice, but always understand where they're coming from. If it's somebody that's here and they're trying to get here and you're also trying to get here, but you're at the same place, I mean, you can't really listen to that. It's subjective to their mentality. So
Totally agree, dude. Sometimes we all know that we're our own critic, and we're going to be harder on ourselves than anybody else. But a lot of that shit, we just predetermine our own brain, man. We put it there. We allow it to rent space in our brain. And until we can remove and unlock that and just continue to plow on, or I call it a firewall. I use this term all the time when I'm talking about things at work, and I talk about it, with my wife as well. Like, if you stink at something, or that you're going to feel some type of way about something, you got to put a firewall in place. So that way, when you step outside that line buzzes, or the lights blink, or it's a shock collar, right? It's like, oh shit, I got to go back and I got to turn back around and do that, because I know that normal me would walk away from the confrontation. Normal me would not tell people how I think. Normal me would just bow down and take one for the team, right? And that's not cool. That's not cool. You're dictating your own success and or failure by putting a fence around yourself, and a fence that's so high that you can't climb. So start knocking down the fucking fence, man, and put that firewall in place. So when you have that conversation, and next time somebody makes you feel inferior on accident, like, you earned your place at the table, bro, and you always will, just because of your work ethic and where you're at. And for those of you that are out there, like, you are where you are because that's what you earned. Right, wrong, or indifferent. Life's shit on you, and will continue to shit on you over and over again. And you're going to have to fight, and other people have it easier than others. But keep fighting, and keep putting up those firewalls in place to make it to that level. So that's it, man. Until next time, right?